Hey, hi everyone. Hi Ohad.
Hey Frank, how you doing?
I'm doing okay. So this is going to be recorded for folks and you, Ohad. Um, we are going to wait just like a few minutes to let some other people join in, and some of the ones that can't make it, you're going to have the recording of that whole thing sent to you automatically. So, Ohad, in the meantime, do you want to just like maybe introduce yourself and tell us a bit what your street creds are?
Sure. So I'm Ohad from San Francisco, the co-founder and CEO of Stackbit. Stackbit is a platform for Jamstack websites, mainly for visually editing them. It brings together technical and non-technical people in a collaborative environment that really makes both of these functions shine, whereas usually there's a lot of friction in that space. Very big Jamstack enthusiast, embedded into the ecosystem in various ways. And yeah, you want me to touch on anything specific?
No, that's fair. How long? Like, can you just tell me a tiny bit about the inception of the Jamstack, like the term or the movement? Where were you at that time?
Yeah, so I've been I'm an engineer and an entrepreneur, probably the two main things about me. But I've been thinking about this space and the changes in architecture that most people use for building websites since 2010 or 2011. And it was a journey that started with just my personal websites and the websites that I managed for random family members and whatnot. In 2010, most of the websites that I was kind of overseeing were hosted on shared hosting, WordPress, which inherently means vulnerabilities and slowdowns and websites getting hacked and a lot of cPanel, definitely a lot of cPanel. And I was spending time trying to think about better ways and became really interested in websites and became very interested in deploying static websites as S3. There was a blog post written by Werner Vogels back in 2000 and I don't know 8, 9, 10 about how you can suddenly start hosting websites from S3 and just map your domain and they'll run a web server there and you don't need to think about it. There's a simple API obviously for S3 to update buckets, and there was something really magical about that. I wasn't as interested in the build processes and CI/CD. It's just like, yeah, man, just throw these files on a server somewhere and don't let me maintain it, and let's be done with this. And that was very magical. And then that was the beginning of my journey with starting to receive S3 bills for $3 a month and $2.50 a month. The S3 bills that a lot of people are probably very familiar with. And I continued to think about that for a couple more years as I, immediately took down my WordPress websites and took a static snapshot of them and put them on S3. And that was amazing for about a month, and then a month later, it's like, well, how do I edit this website? It's very fast, it's very secure. I don't have to worry about it, right? It wasn't, and it's interestingly enough, my motive wasn't as much the speed and security, even though they're very nice. It was just like not having to maintain stuff. And so I kept on thinking about that, and then in 2015, I started experimenting with building out a headless CMS that was based on S3, right?
Okay.
Wanted to build something that didn't require any server. So the headless CMS itself was written in JavaScript. It ran on the page, and it made API calls to S3 to update your static site. It was a lot of fun. And as I was going through that process, I was telling a bunch of friends. And for me personally, this was a very typical process for starting companies or investing in companies, which is also a sport I began competing in 2010.
Yeah.
And so in 2015, I've told a couple of friends about this prototype that I was building. I didn't even call it a headless CMS because nobody was really talking about headless CMS back then. And then one day, a couple of my friends send me a link to this article on Smashing Magazine by this interesting person by the name of Matt Dillman, and I start reading that article, and it's like, yeah, this person knows what he's talking about, and like we're thinking about these things really in very, very similar ways. And as I was going through and through and through, I was like, my desire to start a company that would do that kind of diminished, and my excitement about what Matt was building, or Matt and Chris were building, kind of increased. So I connected with Matt and Chris, the founders of Netlify at the time. There were just two people, and was very fortunate to kind of put together the first round of funding for the company and join the board of the company. And so I had a kind of a first row seat to the real growth of Netlify, but more importantly, in our context, to a certain extent, the birth of the Jamstack ecosystem. So yeah.
Yeah, so folks, that's a masterclass in how you show off your street creds when it comes to Jamstack. Thanks, Ohad. I think it's just great to have you here, and I'm glad that we created we started a relationship when you were just launching Stackbit. That was 2019 or 18?
Yeah, early 2019.
Yeah, and for some context for people who are joining or people who are going to be listening afterwards, at Snipcart we've been in the movement for a while, right? We've been creating content and talking about it and connecting with different peers, and there was this great bundling job to be done always in the Jamstack, right? So the modularity is king. It's cool. You can pick the best job for the best tool for the job, but you got to wire all of that stuff together. And one of the ambitious side project ideas that we had at Snipcart was to create some kind of a universal bundler of Jamstack projects. And at one point, I started hearing about Stackbit. And I don't know exactly how we got connected, but then we chatted, and I was like, okay, well, first of all, these folks are better suited than us for doing that, much better suited, and that problem is much more complex than I had anticipated. So it would have been a total failure to try to do this as a side project, being a bootstrapped company. And I feel like, well, you and I have a personal relationship, but like we've been privileged to see the business, not only the business, but the platform grow. And that's something that I want to start with, maybe, is the fact that Stackbit comes into play in this Jamstack universe and targets, and Ohad, you correct me if I'm wrong, the value proposition that you folks are trying to bring to the table is about making the Jamstack more accessible for all of the other beautiful people that are involved in a web project, right? It's not only developers, it's not only about the developer experience, it's about creating and collaborating on a project. And in my mind, that's how I kind of see the very, very large mission of Stackbit. But what's been very interesting to see is how you move forward into that mission, right? So being an experienced entrepreneur, you've being in the valley with resources and everything, you've iterated a lot on Stackbit, and this has been just crazy, the velocity of product development on your end. So can you give us like maybe a rundown of what it first was, where are you moving towards, like the rough big steps maybe?
Yeah, sure thing. And starting companies is a really crazy, really crazy and irrational thing to do. But I highly encourage it. And when the reason that we started Stackbit was exactly what you pointed out. I had witnessed the growth of the Jamstack and the evolution of the Jamstack, and at the point in time where I was personally convinced that this is going to be the next big milestone in web architectures, and kind of regardless, even if the term Jamstack itself will encompass kind of the future architecture, but just this shift to build pipelines for websites, statically serving assets, and so forth. Once I kind of became convinced, I took a look at the ecosystem, and it was very clear that we were still at this point in time where it was only accessible to kind of hardcore developers and people who were very knowledgeable about the space, or that had the time and resources and capabilities to kind of invest a lot of time studying the space. And that was already, a million or more than a million people, right? So in terms of developers, it's the estimates vary, but I would say my personal estimate is anywhere between 30 and 50 million developers in the world today. And it's a whole separate discussion, like the definition of developers and what is a developer and what skills do you need in order to be a developer. And I'm very much a believer and supporter of the democratization of what it means to be a software developer. And so at any rate, was this point in time in late 2018, early 2019, where I was like, okay, I really believe this is going to be a massive shift, and it's currently only accessible to developers. And to really fulfill its potential and kind of leap forward to the next level of growth, this needs to be an architecture that can be adopted by organizations, by companies, by agencies, and by less technical people. Whether it's less technical developers who want to participate, but it's still too complex, or whether it's marketers, content editors who want to be able to work on websites, and they kind of need the tools to do that, because even in 2018, we've kind of established the table stakes for what it means to be able to edit a website. We have massively successful and adopted consumer grade products like Squarespace and Wix and Webflow, even to a certain extent. People have a certain set of expectations when they think about what it means to come in and work on a website. And so if you are thinking about popularizing a new approach to building websites, and at the same time you're inviting non-technical people to come and collaborate and participate in requiring them to understand Markdown and build phases and HMR and preview servers and all of those things, you're really asking them, in structured content, you're really asking them to do a lot. And in my opinion, you kind of hamper the adoption. And so that was basically the goal with starting. It was to address that on a multitude of different ways. Now, I didn't even answer your question, but to your question, our wedge was basically, hey, let's just make it easy for developers and even non-technical people to kickstart a website. It currently takes hours and hours and hours and research and understanding and what's a theme and what's a static site generator and what's a headless CMS. Let's just make this a point and click experience and kind of orchestrate this for people. And that clicked really, really, really well. And that's a tool that we still offer today, that a lot of people engage with every day. It's really, really kind of massively successful. And a lot of people use it for educational purposes, to experiment with different pieces of the Jamstack ecosystem. And a lot of people use it as part of their agency and to actually start websites. So that's pretty cool. After that got some traction, we started thinking about, well, what's going to be the commercial product? What's the missing piece in empowering people to actually use this? And we kind of identify the gap between the CMS and the headless CMS. Because as we all know, the Jamstack kind of unbundled monolithic CMSs, those are terms that we use a lot. But basically what it means is that conceptually we took things like WordPress, which had everything kind of jammed together, right? The hosting, the editing, the back office, the modeling, and the programming and everything. And we took it apart into a couple of pieces that we as engineers and architects felt that kind of made sense. Oh, like, why don't we manage content separately? Why don't we host the websites separately? Why don't we build them with like little open source packages that we call static site generators? And like that really clicked for developers. But what we lost and what we completely sacrificed was this unified experience, that there's a place that I can go to. It's my admin, it's my back office, it's my editor, it's where I work on my website. We kind of lost that. Now, developers don't really care as much, or it doesn't pain them as much, because they work when they think of the website, they think about the code, they think about GitHub, they think about their local IDE, they think about their terminal, they think about their NPM scripts, and that's how they kind of think about the website. But when you start going to your marketing department and tell them, listen, our new website is going to be built with these new technologies. It's going to be using Next.js and Sanity.io, and it's going to run on Netlify. And like, look at you, and like, whatever. I mean, like, how do I do SEO? How do I change the headline? And so that got us to kind of go really deep into right, as you know, as we separated with the Jamstack, we separated content from what we do with that content. We kind of made it really hard, because when you want to edit a website, you have to go here and edit strings and upload images without having a clear understanding of what's going to come on the other end of the pipe. And usually there's not even a continuous loop, right? So very often you would see people making changes. You would see marketers going into a website and changing something and publishing it just to see what happens without knowing, is that going to take 30 seconds or a minute? How do I roll back? Like all this power of the Jamstack with the power that Netlify brings, and Gatsby and Next.js bring, and Contentful and Sanity and Dado and all the great headless CMS, like all of those things, there was no real way to put that power in the hands of less technical people. And so we really jumped into building a deep understanding and a lot of IP around recreating the connection between the visual artifacts, the results of your work, the actual website, and what is driving it. What code is responsible for this H1? Where is this string coming from? So that we can recreate, not even invent something new, but so that we can recreate the visual editing experience that less technical people are expecting and that are used to. Like, less technical people just expect to click the H1 and change it and hit save and see kind of what it looks like and shrink it to a mobile device and hit publish or not hit publish. So basically just recreating that, but on top of the Jamstack.
I feel like this is like for sure one of the value proposition that Stackbit owns, I think, right now, or delivers on. I also feel like it's a bit of an underselling of everything you've built in the sense that you allow people to basically just bundle everything, right? So if people have a Jamstack site, correct, like they can use Stackbit on top of it and like edit it and access to your beautiful studio that we're going to see in a minute. But if they don't have a Jamstack site or they want to create one quickly, you can do this also, correct? I don't know how much of a priority it is in terms of product, but it's like it's a technical feat that is worth mentioning, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, and thanks for recognizing that. I think that my perspective on it is, I've already kind of like digested and the technical difficulties of doing it. And by the way, our studio experience, our visual editing experience is 10 times harder than the provisioning of new websites.
Okay.
It is, mainly because we do it without requiring developers to do anything. We don't require them to tag their content. We don't require them to integrate an SDK. We don't require them to switch out their React components for our custom way of doing things. We just take their project and provide the editing experience on the top. And when somebody changes the H1, there's a git commit to the right markdown file, or an API call to the right contentful endpoint, and the content changes.
Okay.
I think the interesting thing though with startups is just thinking about how do you make this whole thing work, and basically identify that it's hard for people to create Jamstack websites, and so making it democratizing that or making that more accessible is a great benefit to us. So we focus on that, and most of that functionality today lives in a satellite website that we've built, which is called Jamstack Themes.
Yeah.
If you Google that, or
I'm going to show it.
Yeah, if you Google any popular combination of like, I don't know, Hugo blog theme or something, more than not, you're likely gonna get to Jamstack Themes, where you can browse a bunch of themes for different Jamstack technologies, and typically also easily provision a website from those themes.
Okay, I think that's that's a fair introduction to Stackbit, both from a philosophical point of view and also a technical point of view. The best next step for people, I think, is to just get into it, right? So for those of you who don't know Snipcart, welcome. It's always a pleasure to meet new people. Snipcart is a low footprint, developer first e-commerce solution. It's very simple. Its shopping cart is injected via JavaScript, like you do with a Google Analytics snippet. And products are defined as HTML elements. So that's a bit of a different paradigm from what people are used to. So an HTML button, for instance, could have some data product attributes that give price and description and image and whatnot. And yeah, we've been running for 8 years now, and we've been close friends to Stackbit. So we've collaborated on some marketing initiatives and also on some more like deeper integrations, if you will. And the fruit of some of these collaborations is what we're going to discuss today. It is a theme that lives in the repository that Ohad just described called Plenty. And it's an e-commerce Jamstack theme that even non-developers can use to quickly create a Jamstack e-commerce site. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen, and I'm going to walk you through the whole thing. So you folks can see the infinite thing here. Okay. So stackbit.com if you want to learn more. Now I'm going to show you how we built this, right? So this is on swag.snipcart.com. It is a real website with real beautiful people. They all work at Snipcart. And we are selling some swag. So the initiative is to both get closer to a merchant's reality, have more proximity with their pains and whatnot, but also, you know, to sell some of our swag to people who want to support us. And more often than not, we give away some promotions or codes or coupons so people can just go and purchase for free, for instance, some swag. So this is a fully functional e-commerce site that runs on Plenty, which is a Stackbit theme. And of course, we have customized it a little bit, but I'm going to show you how you could kind of do the same, create something out of almost, well, let's just call it low effort, right? Or low code. Okay, so first step, if you were to start your Jamstack e-commerce with Stackbit and Snipcart, you'd go here. So Ohad already mentioned it, but that's jamstackthemes.dev, or you can just Google for a specific theme. Okay, I was just wondering if, sorry. And once you're there, you can Control F, and then there's Plenty. It should also appear if you go into the archetype e-commerce over here. But let's just select it from here now. So from this space, what's cool is that we all already see everything that is supported, all of the different kind of tools that you could use to build a Jamstack website, and that will be bundled automatically by Stackbit, right? So okay, let's go through it. If I hit create a site here, now we are redirected to app.stackbit.com, where we can choose our stack, right? So the theme here has already been chosen. It's Plenty. Plenty comes equipped with Snipcart, so you'll want to pick this one if you want to do Jamstack e-commerce with Plenty, with Stackbit, with Snipcart. And then you can pick the different other parts of your Jamstack. So let's say here it's just there are 4 SSGs or front-end frameworks supported. Let's say we pick Gatsby, and then there are various ways to manage your content that are available, some coming depending on demand or whatever. We'll pick Netlify CMS that is available, a very lean and lightweight open source CMS for Jamstack sites. And then there's the code repository that you can pick. For now, I'm already connected through my GitHub, and I believe I'm also connected via Netlify. So the code will be stored in GitHub and then deployed on Netlify, right? So parallel Mango, let's do it. Create a site. Now, while this is warming up, the world record is 32 seconds. That's good. Remember that if you feel like this is taking a bit of time, well, just consider bundling all of that stuff together by yourself. It would take much more than a few seconds. What we're going to want to do at the same time that we do this is create a Snipcart account. So you can go to snipcart.com and just let me log out so I can give the exact experience, right? Don't have an account, sign up. You can sign up here for free in test mode. Snipcart's for free. So Francois plus trolls at snipcart.com. Let's sign up here. We're going to ask you to verify your email. If I go here, it should appear here. So that's good old me saying hi, personal touch. You can confirm your Snipcart account by clicking here. And I'm just going to put some dummy data here. However, this we can complete later on too. So complete my registration. And you'll get access to Snipcart's dashboard, right? There's a wizard walking you through what you need to set up in the beginning, how things work. We're not going to spend too much time on this for the sake of brevity. What is cool, actually, is that once you created your Snipcart account, you will have access to what we call the API keys. This is a public test API key that we're going to be able to use to activate the e-commerce part of our Plenty Stackbit site. So if we go back to Stackbit, what do we have here? We have a beautiful studio that lets us edit content directly on our brand new Jamstack site. So I can like pause the e-commerce stuff for just a tiny second and show you what you can do with Stackbit, right? So say you're a non-technical person, much like I am. Every elements are available directly in the UI, and you can change them right away. So welcome, Jamstack peeps. I'm going to save that. And as you can see, there's a little loading animation. Now we have a color scheme that's telling us there's something we can publish here. And I'm just going to go ahead and show you the live site right now, hosted on Netlify. So that's a brand new site that Stackbit bundled and published for us through Netlify. And then I can tell them to update this right away. And if I go on my live site, I will have a UI feedback from Stackbit, since I'm logged in, telling me your content is being deployed. If you want to get into the nitty-gritty, you can get the logs right here. And it's going to change color back when it's ready, right? So let's give it just a sec. It's deploying the whole thing, right? For those of you who are familiar with Jamstack deploys, it really the time frame here really depends on the tools you're using in the front end and how you're deploying that whole thing. So just to recap here, in the Stackbit Studio UI, you can change stuff directly in this content tab, and there's no need to be like tech savvy here, right? It's pretty intuitive. So you have the different pages that are available, and then you can decide to edit those pages, and you're going to have access either inline in the UI, in the design, to the elements you want to change, or directly through this more traditional CMS-ish UI, if you will. So yeah, I mean, that's it seems simple and elegant, but there's a lot of stuff, like Ohad told us, happening behind the scenes for this to work. So now Stackbit is telling us that our site is deployed successfully. We can refresh it, and welcome, Jamstack peeps. That's it. I just modified a whole Jamstack site without without playing into code or whatever.
Pretty cool.
Okay, cool. I'm not seeing the chat, so Ludo, if there's anything, you can just either up on the stage or tell me if I need to pause or whatever. Awesome. Okay, let me continue then. Now, this is...
Maybe, Frank, I'll just say something about
the
editing experience. So one of the key things that Stackbit does is it understands the content structure and the content schema that the website is built on, and it provides the visual editing experience based just on that, right? So what it means is that a marketer or a customer in an agency can't just go in and change the CSS color for everything. But if you defined the H1 to be kind of content driven, then that's going to be editable. Or if you define your homepage with a content model that has sections where each section can have a different set of components, then that experience, that editing experience, is going to be available to non-technical people, right? If where it says see all items, that's actually an array of buttons in the content schema, you'll easily be able to add another button. I don't know if that's the case, or perhaps for the images below. So just to point out, like, the editability is basically driven by the content schema. And so developers don't necessarily need to, kind of be concerned that people are going to come in with this editor and start changing things that they did not anticipate. So I see Cody's asking about Stackbit YAMLs. And so Stackbit YAMLs are a kind of a legacy Stackbit content schema. And yes, that's I wouldn't say that's going away, but in a couple of weeks we are introducing a couple of tools that will abstract away 99% of the work of having to deal with the Stackbit YAML. And so, and also just to clarify, if you're working with a website that's utilizing an API-based headless CMS like Contentful or Sanity, you do not need to redefine your schema with Stackbit. We just interface with those headless API-based headless CMSs to consume the content schema. If you already have a content schema for a Git-based website, whether it's a Netlify CMS schema or a forestry schema, we scan those as well, and you don't have to create one. But keep an eye on our Dev Center and general announcements. In a couple of weeks, we're going to put out a couple of really great tools that significantly improve the developer experience when it comes to importing existing sites, adding components, manipulating schemas, and so forth.
Nice, thanks. And yeah, of course, don't hesitate to drop in and add some context and info about Stackbit. As you folks can see, I'm doing a very simple demonstration of just using one theme inside of Stackbit and a tiny bit of features. Maybe we can get back to the code editor later, but I want to touch on this also. So stick around, peeps. I'm going to keep using content editor to finish the Snipcart demo, and then Ohad's going to tell us a bit more about the code editor. Okay, so now we created a brand new website that's live, and if we were to try Snipcart, the add to cart button, it won't work right now, right? And the reason behind this is that we first need to add our API key in the studio. This is where we can do it. So on our left menu here, you have plenty site configuration. You have a little toggle on Snipcart public API key. If I jump back into my Snipcart dashboard, get that test API key, go back to Stackbit, and then paste that. You'll see that there's a change ready to be published. So I can do that. Hit publish. And now, while that updates and deploys, we're going to do a little something else in terms of configuration for our e-commerce to work. So I'm going to take my root domain here. That's right now being provided by Netlify, but it's super easy to have your own custom domain, even using Netlify or anything else that you prefer. In Snipcart, you're going to want to go to account and then to domains and URLs. And this is a place where you can, where you can add your domain. So we, Snipcart, can go back on your site, crawl to make sure the products are at the right place, no information has been tampered with, and we can securely process your orders. So here, I'm just going to hit save on this. Thank you. Just to make sure, I'm going to refresh this. There was a... Okay, good. Now, we told Snipcart that our store was located on this Stackbit site. We told Stackbit that the Snipcart link, the Snipcart API key was this. And in theory, if my curse of doing live demos has been lifted, we should be able to add this beautiful big plant. Whoop. Of course, I zoomed in. To Snipcart. So let's do that again. So Nulla, subscribe, and then add to cart. And we have a beautiful integration of Snipcart that's already working out of the box. We could check out in theory. So let's say I'm Charles, my partner. Like this. Go Quebec. Quebec. Now, notice that there is no shipping step right here because here in Snipcart, we have not enabled shipping, but we could very well do so. And then you can integrate with FedEx, rates, or Purolator, or USPS. There's a whole bunch. Or you can do your own custom shipping methods. It's up to you, really. Now, if I were to continue the payment, we're going to get a notice that this is a test card. And there's this specific number to use. Let me just go through it real quick. We got a little UI glitch to go over. But if we place the order, it should work. Yes, thank you for your order. Now, that transaction, I don't know, I didn't time myself, but it was pretty quick to get started and selling online with a Jamstack e-commerce site. And if we go back to our Snipcart dashboard and we hit the Manage Store menu in the dashboard, we're still in test mode, remember? We now have an order from my friend and co-founder, Charles, at Snipcart, who bought a beautiful plant that there's even this beautiful picture here that we can send it to him, go in our inventory and do all of our e-commerce jazz. So that's how Plenty works in a nutshell. I feel like I should mention that inside Stackbit UI, you can go to products and you can either edit existing products, right, to replace that dummy data with your own real products, or you can hit that big blue button and say, create a page, and the content types are already defined, the templates are already defined, sorry, and you can, so this would be like your product one, and here the page has been added. Inside that submenu, we can edit it, and all of our fields that are required by Snipcart can be edited inline. There's no need to go into the HTML or do an integration with a CMS like many people do with Snipcart sometimes to create kind of a UI to create the products. And this, for those of you who don't know about Snipcart, is how products work at Snipcart. So there's a tutorial here. Maybe someone from my team can link to it in the show notes in the chat. But yeah, these are basically the attributes that we require to be present when we process an order on your site. I think I'm pretty much, there's a small other demo I wanted to do, which is super, let me see. If I go here, and I go back on the home, I like the visual editing part, so I just thought I'd change the background image. Wait, let me go here, edit that in content. I'm on the home, and there's a whole sections, the hero section, correct, background image, right? So now there's an emphasis in the UI on the element that's being changed. You can upload something different. I recently ordered some trolls, dolls for Charles that I had delivered at his home. So I could just upload this. The studio is going to reflect the change. And then if you want to really publish the change, you can do so. 2, that is pretty much it for the Plenty overview. I'm going to go really quickly over the dashboard management. I would just like to see my, I'll go back to it when it's updated. Okay, so this is Snipcart's dashboard. Right now, there's no data because we're in test mode and we haven't done a lot of tests. But just to give you a quick overview, this is where you can get a bird's eye view of what's going on with your store, sales, orders, all that stuff, customers and products. And your orders will appear here with details. You can change their status, refund. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can do. Subscriptions. If I'm correct, we should be like releasing subscriptions right now, as I'm speaking, this afternoon for the V3. So you can reach out to us at geeks@snipcart.com if you want it enabled for your site. They're going to be in early access. All abandoned carts are going to show up here. You can create recovery campaigns where there's an automation in terms of email sent, and then with a discount for people who have dropped their cart, abandoned their cart for like an hour, a day, whatever. You can choose all of that. Your customers, your discounts. You can set the inventory of products too. Then we support digital goods. So yeah, there's like Snipcart is a fully featured e-commerce solution. My goal is not to go through all of what it entails and supports, just to let you know that it's pretty comprehensive. And I think that will be the end of my quick demo. Let me just stop sharing this here and see. Okay, I have some questions that we can get into right now. And then I have some closing thoughts that I would like, or maybe, Ohad, you can, let's go through the questions first.
First of all, that was pretty cool, Frank. So well done.
Thank you. So I was asking, how do you at this point of completed order redirect the customer to say URL on the same site? Okay, so there was already an answer to that. Is there any giveaway today from the swag store? Ludovic, while we were finishing up, if you want to create some, I don't know, some discounts for people who are there, some promotions, promo codes, you can either create them on your own and then share them in this chat or share them with me on Slack. And before the end, I will share these promo codes with the community here in the chat. Ohad, would you? So I want to be sensible. I want to respect everyone's time. I got But I would like you to go over the code editor if you don't mind. Do you want me to share my screen and then you guide me, or you do it yourself, or?
I can talk about it a little bit while I'm bringing it up here. And yeah, so we recently, and by recently I mean yesterday, yesterday announced that we've integrated VS Code into the Stackbit Studio, and it's on one hand it's extremely banal, but on the other hand, it's kind of very powerful in ways that we didn't necessarily expect. You know, one of the things that we see is we see people struggling with setting up local development environments, and everything that we can do, or anything that we can do to help them, you know, set up their website and work on their website more easily is basically unlocking another segment of the population that builds websites to be able to do that, or in this particular case, Jamstack websites. And so the idea of not having to set up your local development environment, but still having full access to the source code is pretty buzzing voice in the background right now. Marco, let us know in the chat. Interesting. Frank, do you see? Is it?
Yeah, that's weird. I was muted, so I don't think that it's sounds okay. Okay, maybe there's something with the audio of the person. I don't know. You keep going here.
Yeah. So so at any rate, and actually, Frank, do you mind loading this up on your
Oh yeah, for sure.
project? I didn't have one ready, unfortunately.
Yeah, for sure. Let me share back and go back here with the trolls. Okay, so we're on the home page.
So I mean, the important thing, the Stackbit Studio, basically, in order to facilitate the visual editing, we are running your static site generator in a kind of dev mode, hot model reloading kind of environment. And so for us to offer an editing experience for code is relatively straightforward, right? So you can go and make changes in code, and they will instantly reflect on the right-hand side. And so the first thing we realize that this feedback loop is just so powerful. But that wasn't it. Do you mind hovering over, let's say, welcome Jamstack peeps?
Yep.
And if you click it, you'll see two buttons. You'll see code and content. Do you mind hitting content? And so this takes us right to the you know, file that has the content for this. In this case, it's probably a line in a front matter. So yeah, that's going to be really cool. Make that change, and just hold on for a moment. There you go. And so this works both ways, and it really helps drive the idea of how Stackbit works. And if you go and do an inline edit of that content right now, right? You're going to see the code get updated. And so that's basically how Stackbit works. Stackbit understands that this particular field in the front matter is responsible for this visual element, and we facilitate this kind of experience. The second thing that you can do, which is really cool, is if you go to people, here we go, and click on code instead of on content, it'll take you to the component that's basically responsible for this, and you can modify the HTML template. You can navigate to the CSS behind this, and basically you can start making, you know, however many changes and kind of emergency fixes to the website that you need, without having to remember or understand or internalize the full architecture of how this was built. Because like most of us know enough HTML, CSS, and JavaScript that if we're just taken to the right place and understand the relationship between things, we can fix things, we can make things happen, we can duplicate a component, we can reorder things, we can modify a style. But when you're faced with local development environment and a foreign architecture or a foreign, static site generator, it's just infinitely harder. So this isn't for everyone, but it's amazing how many people are already using this. This has been live for a couple of weeks on Stackbit, and it's a phenomenal way to study new static site generator. It's a great way to make emergency fixes without having to maintain a local development environment. Imagine you're an agency and you have 100 customers and one of them calls you in the middle of the night. Boom, boom, boom. You can make that change. So that's kind of the power of the code editor. And it's VS Code, so it comes with everything that you expect. Yeah, exactly. And Sarah wrote, it sure beats logging into GitHub or GitLab Online to edit stuff that's not just text or visual. And that's basically me, because when you're faced with like making a quick change, it's very typical that like setting up a local development environment is too much of a burden. And so like you'll just go into GitHub and then go on this quest to try and find whatever it is that's affecting the result that you're trying to achieve. And so the real-time feedback is super cool, and the connection between the code and the visual is super cool. And obviously any changes that you're making, whether they're code or content, are happening on a preview branch. They're not happening on a main branch. You're not triggering a rebuild. Only when you hit publish do we kind of merge branches and trigger the rebuild with Netlify in this case.
This is awesome. I'm glad you walked us through this one. I really like it. Yeah, I'm also glad some people are responding to this in the chat. I think we've screen shared enough here. So I had some questions more maybe in closing for you, and maybe after that we can address some things in the chat if there are questions remaining. But yeah, we riffed. We talked about no code and low code and accessibility of the Jamstack. And I think you brought a good point when you said that you were very much for the democratization of software. And I think that idea kind of transcends the labels of code, low code, no code. I'd be curious to know if, like, from a positioning perspective or from an audience perspective, have you seen some trends in the kinds of users or the kinds of projects that Stackbit is being used for? Or if just in general you have some thoughts on no code versus low code, I'd like to get into that.
Yeah, I'm super fascinated by low code and no code tools, and to a certain extent, a lot of the things that we build at Stackbit can and should be considered low code and no code tools. But it's really in the eye of the beholder. I think that the Jamstack as an ecosystem right now is not friendly enough to less technical people, and I like to think about this as a spectrum. And like on the one side of the spectrum, you have a person who will only write assembly code and never use any commercially available service, and that's like they sit in a very dark room with 50 monitors and they code 24 hours a day, right? That's like one person. Not necessarily our audiences, not necessarily your audience. Great people, maybe us in a different universe. That's one side of the spectrum. The other side of the spectrum is people who are curious enough to want to touch all of this new stuff and do something with it, and they come from some appreciation for the value that new technology brings in the case of the Jamstack, speed, security, and so forth. But they're not technical enough, or they don't have enough time to be able to take these things and put something together. And so I think that no-code tools, I kind of separate between them. And by the way, I'm no expert, and so this is just like me, doing a brain dump of what's currently there in my mind. Yeah. I think no-code tools are kind of different, because no-code basically, in my mind, means people who don't necessarily care about the code or programmability and extensibility to a certain extent. They're just looking to produce. And I don't think those people are going to care as much about Jamstack at this point in time. Again, if we kind of limit our discussion to Jamstack.
Yes.
Low code starts to be more interesting because it's about how do you enable people to produce and build things that are expandable, kind of like by definition expandable or extendable, and that's an area that interests me personally much more. The no code crowd has Wix and Squarespace and so many different things that they can use. The low code crowd, I feel like those are the people who are showing up today and are trying to use the Jamstack. They're either frustrated with WordPress or frustrated with Adobe Experience Manager, and they're looking to build something new. They're frustrated with Shopify or whatever, and they're looking for easy ways to get started. You know, we ask that we, as an ecosystem, we still ask too much of them. And the less we ask of them and the more we empower them to create, the faster the ecosystem will grow and the faster adoption will happen.
Yeah. And then what was your, so if we were to zoom out of Stackbit and Snipcart and just look at the industry a little, are there any companies or products that, or even communities that you feel are moving in that direction of easing the adoption challenges for not necessarily developers in the Jamstack, so non-technical users? I know some people don't like that term, but whatever, managers, marketers, editors, whatnot. Are there any other inspirations that we can look to?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there are a bunch of companies that are doing very good work to try and make this more accessible. I think a lot of the headless CMSs are really putting in a lot of work to improve the editing experience, yeah, and also differentiate between one and another. You know, Dado CMS introduced a very cool block editor concept a couple of months ago. You know, Sanity's doing really, really great work, although mostly appealing to developers, but also in enabling people to build workflows that are great for less technical people. You know, we see in the space of editing, we see Tina CMS, which is very interesting. Yep. Another visual editing, somewhat significantly different technical implementation, but the same kind of vision, if you will, of empowering less technical people to edit websites. And we're also seeing a new crop of kind of semi-proprietary Jamstack site builders popping up, which are super interesting. There was one in YC Demo Day called WeWeb, if I'm not mistaken, and there are a couple of other kind of popping around, which try to combine easier editing while still maintaining a certain level of extensibility to the code, whether you can connect to the GitHub repo or maybe if there's a GitHub repo at all. So it's I think that we're basically seeing people shooting darts at the board and seeing if they're hitting something at this whole spectrum that goes between like complete DIY, I can do anything I want, to like I need a developer, I can't do anything without a developer.
I'm curious to know your thoughts on so Gatsby is a big player in the space. It has been for years now, and they have been making a lot of noise in various circles. Do you think that, so Gatsby is growing in popularity, and in order to scale, I think they need to do something similar to what we're talking about, right? To make it more accessible to either less experienced developers or just like all of the other personas involved in a project, right? So do you think that they're trying to go about this by integrating with platforms that are already very much user-friendly and accessible, like the Shopifys, the WordPresses, these kinds of pillars and staples that are already well-known and familiar to the crowd that we're discussing? Do you think that's how they go about it?
It's really hard. It's really hard to tell because none of us really knows what the path of success will be. We all have to try and see what works. But I think it's definitely interesting. You know, marketers, take take Gatsby as an example. They seem to be putting a lot of effort into creating great integrations with WordPress as a headless CMS. And guess what? A lot of marketers are very comfortable with WordPress, and so it's going to be very interesting to see what that brings. The market for websites is massive, right? If you can build something clicks with people, the TAM, or the total addressable market, is very, very big. And so the slice of people who want to continue working with WordPress but benefit from newer technologies, that's hard for me to say, like, is that going to be the future, or is that just like an instance, and can you build a company around that? It's very hard. It's very, very hard to say. I think in general, being a static site generator is kind of a tough business, because it's very much affected by fads. And I think that 2 years ago people were very excited about Gatsby, and now people are very excited about Next.js, and maybe in 12 months people are going to be very excited about Svelte or Vite or something else. And so it's I think it's kind of challenging to build a long-lasting, successful business around something that has an open source package that has very rapid adoption, lack of adoption kind of dynamics. But again, I don't have the purview to how things work in Gatsby or with Next.js or whatnot.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting to see these companies evolve and the different paths that they take to scale and attract different types of people. So if we went back in time a few years ago when you said, where should I host my Jamstack web app or project? Like most people would say just like Netlify or Zeit, and now it's Vercel. I feel like in the past year, maybe, or even more, there have been initiatives coming from the other giants in terms of hosting more static web apps or whatever. How do you see that play out? Do you think that the competition in terms of like hosting and deploying your Jamstack app will be more fierce with all of this stuff happening? I'm thinking about Heroku something, or maybe I'm mistaken with
yeah. So I can run you through all of them, because
DigitalOcean,
DigitalOcean, App Platform, Cloudflare Pages. I think I think it's a very exciting thing that we're seeing happening. We're basically seeing an AWS Amplify a year or so ago gave it a decent shot. Companies are recognizing the opportunity with offering a phenomenal developer experience. Netlify, and I'll put my Netlify hat on for just a moment. Netlify is first and foremost a phenomenal developer experience that empowers developers to focus on what they're interested in, which is writing code and building sites, and abstract away everything that is related to DevOps, security, deployment, and so forth. And it's a magical experience. I remember the first time that I moved one of my websites to Netlify, it was very rapidly followed by me moving all of my websites to Netlify, even those that are not statically generated, even those that were just hosted on S3. I immediately created a GitHub repo for them, put the code in GitHub repo, and set up a Netlify site, because I don't have to worry about it anymore, and it's magical, and the SSL and everything. So I think we're seeing a lot of companies that had technical products in different layers, whether it's AWS or Cloudflare, or DigitalOcean is perhaps the closest in terms of the developer persona, or some of the developer personas, identifying that there's a new way of building websites, and developers flock to companies that offer that extremely convenient developer experience. And so it's I think the competition is good and interesting. Netlify is a phenomenal company, and they're kind of the 900-pound gorilla in this market. But I think that all of these offerings are going to see success, and obviously Cloudflare is going to be somewhat successful with introducing this product to their existing user base, and so is DigitalOcean. And so I think it's great to see, and in parallel to that, there's another vector of like the evolution of the Jamstack, and what can you do with the Jamstack, and how does the evolution of Next.js work with the Jamstack, and so I think a lot of interesting things are gonna continue happening there. But I would be a fool to predict what the world would look like in 5 years, but It's I think it's very interesting.
I think you responded elegantly to the different questions that I brought to the table. It's just so great for me to connect with you live and then have your input on all that stuff. It's the kind of discussions that we had in the past, and to be able to just record this and share it with the community, I think it's going to be a value add for sure.
Same here. I mean, thanks for having me, and always happy to do this. You just need to know when to click my stop button, because I'll just talk forever. So.
That's fine, man. So Ludo, who's a colleague of mine, is going to drop a promo code in the chat. I think, boom. Oh, wow, good timing. So if you want to go to swag.snipcart.com, you can have some discounts on swag. And I guess we can wrap this up for now. There's just a esoteric question that I want to answer to close on a note. So Marco asked, my last name Lantier is the name of a very old noble family, about 1,000 years, in my own hometown in Gorizia. Any origin there? So I always felt like royalty and like a king. So I do believe there must be a link here. And I'm just messing around. I have no idea, but I'll for sure Google that stuff and try to see if there's a link. But I just love the question. Yeah, folks. I mean, thank you so much for those of you who had the time to attend and ask some questions and just be here. It's awesome. And for those of you who are watching this not live, well, there's comments on YouTube, and you can reach us both on Twitter. Ohad is, maybe Ludo can drop his Twitter handle in the chat. And then stackbit.com if you want to try to edit your Jamstack projects and have a better way to manage and collaborate on those projects. Snipcart.com if you're looking into some lightweight but fully comprehensive e-commerce. And I think I'm at the FLN, so that's THE_FLN. And we're gonna close this session. Thank you so much, everyone, for showing up. And Ludo, you can close this whenever you're ready.
Thanks, folks. Have a good one.